I kind of wondered about that the other day.
I don't need that
You got a sign-in sheet over there, if they run out of space in the back of it.
Get them on the record. Make sure they don't survive.
You don't want any of this?
I do, but I gotta pay attention.
I had to see her. I don't know. I don't know.
All right, so starting here. There are some chairs available over here.
My phone isn't. No.
Folks want to have a seat. Feel free to have a seat.
Can you like scoot over that one just a little bit? Oh my God! You're not gonna miss an opportunity.
Did I?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that's yours. I don't know what I was thinking.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Jesse Bjorkman. I'm a state senator representing the northern and central portions of Kenai Peninsula and your community. Thank you for welcoming me to your community. I enjoy coming here. I enjoy getting to know people here. Your community has a rich history here in Moose Pass, and it's really cool. I like spending time with my family around here in the mountains, chasing ptarmigan, camping, and doing all of the fun stuff that you all like to do and why you live here as well. I've lived in Kenai and Nikiski since 2009, 1 year in Kenai, and then Nikiski was where I needed to be. I started teaching over there in 2009 at the middle school. I taught middle school history for a few years, and then transitioned to teaching middle school history and high school history and government, as well as an outdoor education program that we started there in about 2012. I first got elected to the Borough Assembly in 2019 and then moved to the State Senate in 2022. And this is my third year as your state senator. I'm proud to be your state senator. I'm thankful for that opportunity to represent you. But as is always the case, when rooms are full like this, that means something bad might happen. and that's not a good thing. But what is a really good thing is that all of you are here and you're engaged and you care about your community and what happens. And I'm happy to see so many of you have come out. My number one goal in being here today is to hear from all of you and to listen to your concerns and provide answers that I have now, and then take your questions and find more information to answer your questions that I can't answer tonight. So I'll just start with a really brief legislative update. I brought some charts and graphs and figures. There's a brief little page about some bills that I have introduced so far and some more things that I'm working on. We can talk about that, but most importantly, I want to talk about whatever's on your mind. So, headlines first. The school district put out a plan and built a budget based on the BSA that is currently in statute, base student allocation. The base student allocation is a number by which money essentially gets allocated to school districts per student and takes into account school size and cost of operating the school in that area of the state. Okay? The school district built a budget on that number, not knowing for sure if they would get any amount of money above a BSA of $5,960. Last year, the legislature appropriated $680 in the BSA above that $5,960 mark. Okay? Because the school district wasn't sure if they would get that money again, they had to prepare for scenarios in which what would happen if they only got the statutory BSA amount, alright? And so that's why we're having conversations as a district about closing quite a few schools, along with doing a lot of other things, closing down pools, theaters, sports, making class sizes a lot bigger, doing a lot of things around the district. If school funding isn't provided, at least to the level that it was last year. If it's below that, then we have additional problems. To put that in math terms, if we get base BSA, the school district has a deficit of about 18 million, based on what the borough says they're going to fund. If they fund the same as what they did last year, that number shrinks to about 7 million. All right, and cuts that still have to be made about what do we do to fill that hole. The school district's fund balance is pretty much gone. There's really not any more fund balance to spend to fill an operational hole. So the only place that the school district can go for additional funds is the borough. There's more money that the borough can provide to avoid cuts. The borough can provide some more money for fiscal year 25, which is the last budget cycle, and they could provide up to the cap for this budget cycle to allow the district not to have to cut if the state doesn't come through with BSA funding. Okay? So that's the lay of the land, and that's why we're here. What the state has in front of it now, however, and some graphs up here to talk about this, but essentially, based on current revenue forecasts that were done in the fall, and where we're at as far as performance of the permanent fund, if the state spends the same amount of money and essentially moves the hole forward, it's called the budget management plan. If they move the hole forward from fiscal year 25, which is where we're living right now, to fiscal year 26, and they pay out a dividend as has been paid out in previous years, which is 25% of the percent of market value draw on the earnings reserve. So essentially, if you do everything the same that we did last year, same appropriation for education and same percentage split for the dividend, you have a significant hole in the budget. So the question the legislature has to answer is, how do we fill that hole? What do we do to move forward? And there's lots of ideas about that, both in the building, in the capital, and in communities around the state. So that's a question that needs to be considered. Do people want to raise revenue for taxes? And if so, who will pay those taxes? Do people want to have a smaller dividend? And if so, how much? Or do people want to just spend less money and make cuts? And if so, what? Okay. So we have had a governor for the last 6 years that has had enough votes to hold line item vetoes in the budget for that amount of time. Meaning that the governor could pretty much cut he has the ability to cut whatever he feels is necessary in the budget. And that can happen. The governor's made some vetoes, made some line item vetoes and reduced some spending, specifically on capital projects. But not largely a lot of cuts around other things that he has vetoed stuff in the operating budget. But he has that ability. But cuts to the operating budget, as things go forward, they tend to be rather unpopular. Specifically because we've held our budget flat a lot and brought it up recently in the last few years with the inflationary pressures that we've seen. So it's possible we're looking for cuts, and I'm suggesting multiple cuts in subcommittees that I'm a part of. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But one thing that's really important to me is for us to focus on our constitutional mandates and to prioritize those things. There's schools, roads, and public safety. That's what I'm committed to, and that's what I'm dedicated to make sure we take care of, so that people across Alaska can count on those things and count on our state delivering on our constitutional mission, which is schools, roads, and public safety. So that's kind of the lay of the land as far as the top line, where the big pressure points are in the budget. Okay? We're looking at, over the next 2 years, about a $500 million budgetary hole. If we take for fiscal year 26 and using the current revenue forecast, fiscal year 27. So how do we fill that hole going forward? Right now with those current assumptions, the hole for this coming year is about $300 million. Again, everything's the same. You have a $680 increase to the DSA beyond 5960, and the same percentage of dividend payout. The question that the legislature needs to answer is, what do we do? And that's what I want to hear from you. I want to hear your questions and concerns. What I want you all to know is that I think closing schools in communities like Moose Pass, where your school is a vibrant heart of your community and it means a lot to you guys, it's absolutely unacceptable. It's not okay. Not only is closing Moose Pass School not okay, but it's not okay to keep reducing educational opportunities for kids in this state when it's our constitutional duty to provide our kids and our students with a good education. We can't do it. We're already falling further and further behind because we lack educational opportunities. We can talk more about that to your questions, I'm sure. But I support you guys having a school, and I support our students around the state having the resources they need in order to get a good education.
I agree with that.
Ben?
So if you had carte blanche authority to fix the problem, what would your solution be? Would it be to raise taxes? Would it be to, what would you cut for spending? How would you balance the budget if nobody got in your way? And if you walked into the legislature tomorrow and said, this is how we should do it, what would you propose?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, no, I don't think anybody has a perfect answer to this question because everyone has different ideas. But what I would do is we have a tight spot to get through before we have more oil production that comes online and brings more revenue. And I would be very clear with folks that we're in this tight spot for a short period of time, but we have obligations that we have to meet during this time. So as we look at what can we do, the options there, and I think the options need to be considered in totality, but I think ultimately you wind up having a little bit smaller dividend. You wind up making some cost reductions in other areas of government that are not constitutional mandates. There's such as. It's a great question. So the Department of Labor started some programs recently. It's a subcommittee that we had recently, yesterday, talking about different things that they're doing or they want to do. Some of them are great ideas, but they want to build an additional, very great plumbing and electrical facility down here in Avtech. But it's another, it's $1 million spent to do that, about $850,000. It's a little bit of a way to drop in the bucket, but it's things like that that we can't do right now. It's a program that the Department of Labor started up about workforce training opportunities that kind of takes the place of what school counselors and guidance and career counselors used to do. And they go and travel a lot and visit schools, but they're just kind of there for a day or two and then they're gone. The Department of Labor probably doesn't need to do that right now. We can pull back on some of that and repurpose those folks to go out and do other things that will be more efficient. There are some of those things that have to happen. Also, we need to make sure that we are spending our Medicaid dollars more wisely, as well as how the state spends money on prescription drugs. We're bleeding cash because our bureaucracy surrounding Medicaid and the Department of Health is really, really inefficient. And also, we're paying way more with our state health insurance plan for prescription drugs than we should. So other states have engaged in what's called pharmacy benefit manager reform and saved hundreds of millions of dollars. And I think our state is capable of that as well. But that's only part of the puzzle. So, but definitely I think in the short term, you wind up pulling back on non-constitutionally mandated stuff that the state government's doing. You have a little bit smaller dividend for this short portion, but we have to have schools, roads, and public safety provided for it. So that's where we're at. And we're gonna have conversations in the legislature about how these things happen as we move forward. We're gonna have to talk about that. Cause there's a lot of people asking for a lot of things that are important, right? They wanna see pretrial reform. That means like criminals who might be dangerous, because especially in domestic violence situations or others, they might get bail or have bail conditions that probably should be more strict. If we're gonna keep those people in jail, it's gonna cost more money. So how do we handle that? Yep.
So, just one follow-up question, the BSA then, would you support increasing it the full $1,800 to match so we can actually pay our bills to the school district, or somewhere in between, the ask? What would you do with that?
So the BSA, we don't have the money and we don't have, the state does not have the ability to raise money without causing significant economic harm to pay out an $1,800 increase to the base student allocation. We don't have that this year. If the state were to go out and get that money, you would not have a tenable situation. What I think we can do is I think we can get close to $1,000 increase to the BSA in statute by using our leverage on making government more efficient, as well as leveling the playing field for folks that want to do business in this state, so that we can provide for our constitutionally mandated stuff. I don't know how all that looks, Ben. You still have, so let's say the dividend this year were $1,000, and then you were to have a BSA increase of $1,000, you still have a $200 million hole in the budget for this year. That's a lot.
Right.
So you can't go out and get that. So whether you can achieve $1,000 increase or not, I don't know. But it takes the legislature as a whole and then the governor to agree to that. And I'm not sure that he would. So, see. Mr. Neves.
Yeah, actually, she was in front of me, so she had all of it.
What can we do as a community, that you would suggest to kind of make our voice heard, in terms of what our priorities are, specifically for, the schools?
Yeah. Well, I think you guys do a pretty good job at communicating with other legislators and myself. You guys show up to stuff. But it's very important that you all contact other area legislators and let them know what you think. So you talk to Rep. Elam, that's a great start. But other people need to call your state rep, Bill Elam, and let him know what you think. Let him know why education is important to you and how important it is to your economy here in Moose Pass. It's really important to the economy in the rest of the Kenai Peninsula as well as around the state. You need to contact Representative Louise Stutes and Senator Gary Stevens, who represent the city of Seward. And then you need to contact Representative Rufford in Kenai and Sault. So those are kind of our area legislators here that need to hear from you all about what your priorities are. But as you do that, keep in mind that we have to take into account a lot of needs and a lot of desires with very limited resources. So that's the thing that we're trying to put together every year as we do the budget. Yeah. So you guys have a great community Facebook page where you are posting stuff. It would help me out is if, as your senator, I could join that page with my senator page, but I can't do that right now for awareness. But yeah, you guys do a great job at reaching out and talking at school board meetings. I would urge you to reach out to the borough assembly. You have a great borough assembly person, Cindy Eklund. Okay? You can work with her and let her know what you want. And then when it's time for the borough budget to come out, and whether or not the borough is gonna fund to the cap, you can let the borough know what you expect.
Please contact each one of your assembly members about that, because at Tuesday night's meeting, it was kind of evident that the mayor is not in favor of funding to the cap. So he can talk to all 9 of the assembly members and try to get him on his side, but I can only talk to 2 public meetings, open meetings. So each of you can call or contact each of those other assembly members and encourage them to vote to fund to the cap, which is 2 mil of property tax, which is more than 23% of the base need, which is how they used to calculate it. So that's what we need to ask for from the assembly to get the extra couple $1 million from them.
Yep.
Thanks, Cindy.
So, that's part. Mr. Neese.
Two-part question. When you talk about $1,000 BSA increase, once it goes through the multipliers, if you haven't ever looked at it, it's a good algebra problem. In Anchorage, it increases the amount of money by 300%. What does it do on the Kenai? So $5,900 goes to about $18,000 in Anchorage. What does $5,900 go to here? The second question is, why is central office model of school districts, why is the central office not paid for by the borough or municipality? Why is the state paying for it? 2 questions.
So, yeah, I think I mentioned a little bit in my open. So, with a 5960 PSA, the district has a deficit of 17.4 million roughly. So if the BSA were to increase by $1,000, it closes that deficit to almost 0. But part of that money that would be a result of the increase would come from the borough. About a third of that as resulting would come from the borough, assuming making some assumptions there. So that's kind of how that would work. So it would close that deficit of about 17 million. Those are rough numbers, but that's the delta from 5960 to 6960.
So the BSA amount goes 2% out, 200% out, 100% out? When you take the number, 5960, that's not a number you're talking about. It's what comes out the other end.
Sure.
What comes out the other end?
Yeah, I would have to look at that. I would have to look at that.
I went
Yeah.
to the budget meeting. Yeah, I think it's.
Yep.
It's $20,000 or $23,000 per student. And we can't make that work because of what we fund, which is a system designed by the legislature, which I was there in the 70s before they rewrote the formula. And when they wrote the formula first time, it had caps on salaries of all central office. It was a basket of goods, and it says, you know what, you got a school. Needs a principal, needs a janitor, needs school teachers, needs books. That's what they funded. They didn't fund a central office. And in the 80s, when they changed that formula, we now fund everything. It's here's a blank check. We'll spend it on what you think's necessary. And I think that's the problem. Legislature has to fix that part.
So I think there's a narrative that somehow teachers and paraprofessionals can do their jobs without administrative support. And it's been interesting to me to watch the governor and some of his allies talk about there being a need for a Department of Agriculture within the administration. And in that Department of Agriculture, there needs to be administrators and accountants and IT professionals and a commissioner and deputy commissioners that all help support people who want to farm in this state. And I can tell you, over the last 10 years, our district has cut the amount of money that we spend in central office by a lot. The people that are left over there, they do the jobs of 3 or 4 people what used to be done 10 years ago.
Still $9 million.
Right. But those jobs have to be done, David, in order for teachers like me or anyone else to be able to do our jobs and do them well, because someone has to keep track of the books, someone has to keep track of the money, someone has to keep track of the personnel, and everything that we do to run 43 schools in our district. Unfortunately, a large school district in the state, they probably cut their district office a little too much. And they lost track of some money in their school district. And they spent more than they should have, and they got in pretty big trouble. Because they cut their administration back too much. And we can rail on administration as much as we want, but it doesn't change the fact that they are a needed entity in order for any organization to function. So if you want to pay for that through your property taxes solely and not have the state pay
I'm
at
thinking if the
all,
borough was told to pay that out of their property taxes, we'd probably have the administration we want. When the state pays it, there's no accountability to us.
Right. So the borough pays about a third of the school district budget. The school district is accountable to you through you all electing the school board. Those are publicly elected officials that are in charge of hiring a superintendent and setting policy for the school. And that's how we operate school districts. So they are accountable because all those folks are elected, as well as the borough assembly who provides a third of the funding. There are people, we could do a better job as a school district if we had more support and more people available to help teachers find good, effective curriculum, instead of just taking the first free thing that comes along. There's a big group of teachers in this district that are pretty upset that after the Alaska Reads Act came out, we didn't have folks in place to effectively evaluate curriculum and figure out if it was right for our district. So the state of Alaska said, hey, we have this free thing for you to teach reading. And our district was like, oh good, we like free. We don't have a lot of money. So we implemented this free curriculum, and it's been a pretty clunky rollout. The value of good, effective administration is it's supposed to keep things like that from happening.
I got three things, one softball. First of all, I've been here before the permanent fund was initiated. The first ones were small. Personally, I'm satisfied with a small piece of the permanent fund coming to citizens to keep them aware of the city government, and a balance of it going to operate the schools. You ask for opinions, that's my opinion. Softball. I do not support finfish farming. Can a cook, inlet fisherman, legislator support finfish farming? A little tougher one. Oil production subsidies have not shown benefit outside the oil patch. There've been a number of them during the current administration to encourage drilling, but that hasn't translated into any significant revenue for the state. The level of revenue for the oil resource is at decline relative to corporate income. Can a Republican with a major constituent base in Kenai oil patch support additional return on state oil production? I think you know what I'm talking about.
Let's talk about fish farming first. So the governor has this proposal. He talked to me about this like 2 years ago. He said, Bjorkman, you should run a bill about farming fish in lakes. And I said, no, thank you. So it's an interesting idea. There's a big thing wrong with that idea. Is Alaska has lots of water and lots of lakes, but they're all cold. And if you want to grow fish, you have to have warm water. Maybe. No, I don't support farming fish in Alaska. I think we have a lot to do to support the fish that we bring in as a state already, and a lot of things we can do, and I'm looking forward to moving some pieces of legislation to help out our commercial fishing sector and our seafood industry in general. So we can do that by being a lot smarter about how we have regulations structured, not about harvest, but about things like insurance, and about how folks are able to care for their catch afterward, by taking advantage of some cool technology to provide cheaper refrigeration, things like that. There's lots of possibilities. In every vote that our state's had about oil taxes, this House district, which is District 8 now, and our combined Senate district of the Northern and Central Kenai Peninsula, has been the most oil tax hatinous district in the state. And what I hear from folks most often in Kenai and Soldotna that are connected to the oil and gas industry is that a paycheck for those folks is more important than a dividend check. They understand that oil is the lifeblood of our economy, and it's the lifeblood of their families. If they work in oil and gas service industry, they work at the Marathon Refinery, they work in the industry in general. I don't support raising taxes on people who work or industry in order to pay more money out in a state where only some of us work. I don't support that, and I can't support taxing our economy and taxing people who produce in order to do that. But what we can do, and what I think is really important, is there to be a level playing field. So that's good. That's important. The Constitution says that we are supposed to maximize benefit for Alaska's resources for all the people, and we need to do that. What I can tell you is that under the current tax structure of Senate Bill 21, we have not seen a decline in oil production like was forecasted before it was passed. We have not seen either 1 million barrels a day into the pipeline. That was kind of the pie in the sky promise that would happen. We haven't seen that either. But we definitely have seen a lot of reinvestment and a lot of new projects coming online in the pipeline. So, first oil on the Nuna project for Conoco, that just happened. That's a big deal. The Willow project is underway with 3 pads there. That's a big deal. Santos has their project that is supposed to put first oil into the pipe first quarter of 2026. All these things are new oil into the pipeline that's going to provide more revenue to the state and reduce the tariff cost, or the cost to transport oil down the pipeline. That means the state brings in more revenue for the oil that's already being produced from the state. So as we go through the system, people may want to tweak how our taxes are structured or want to make changes. But as we look at how our system of revenues in the state drives our economy, I think it's important that we have the right balance. And certainly folks that are connected to the industry don't want to see their industry taxed and fear for losing their jobs. But it's kind of one of those things that requires some balance.
Just going off this question, you're speaking of balance. For the last decade, all the oil companies are posting record profits. For the last decade, Moose Pass School has been fighting for its life. Where's the balance?
That's a good question.
It's the same.
Yep.
Where's the balance? Every year, record profits, every year. And you just mentioned you don't want to tax individuals working for oil. That's not Bruce's question. He was talking more about taxing the corporations.
Yeah, that was my answer. I'm not willing to tax folks who are producing, whether they're individuals or companies who work, so that we can pay out bigger dividends. There are some people who like to stand up and say,
maximizing our resources.
Can I also
They're getting a
say,
hell of a deal, and they've been getting a hell of a deal.
That's not, again, it comes, like I said, they're posting record profits year after year. You don't want to even tax them a little bit more. We're not asking for bigger dividends. We're asking for school budgets that just pass.
Yeah.
And they haven't been for over a decade now. What's wrong?
I understand your concern.
We're very frustrated, and I know you're on our side, but it is frustrating to hear you say you won't even consider possibly taxing oil companies a little bit more, when again, they're providing record profits for over a decade now, while the schools are struggling. Where's the balance you're talking about?
Yeah, I
I'm sorry, I
understand.
don't mean to get heated, it's really personal.
I'm sure one of their executive bonuses could cover the entire state.
It's the balance that we're
Somebody needs to
frustrated with.
stand up and talk about it in the chambers.
People do.
Yeah, we want you to too.
We used to have a school tax, which when you got a paycheck, how much was
$10.
it? Was it
Well,
$10?
$10
Out of the
and
first,
$50.
was it every paycheck, or was it?
Every job for a construction worker was 10 a year.
Yeah.
Okay, so, has anybody talked about getting something like that back again?
Yes.
And I know that my son lives in North Dakota, and I think they have a school tax there, specifically for the schools. And, you know, they don't have a lot of population either, but they have good school tax.
Yep. Yeah, there's been a lot of talk. So when revenue runs low, people talk about taxing everything. But what I can tell you is that with the legislative mix that we have and the governor that we have, our chances of taxing anything else are low. Unless people speak with a clear voice at the state about what it is that Alaskans want. That's a reality of where we're at.
Talk about that in such a way that the people who don't care, will listen.
Mhm.
How do you do that?
Well, for me, schools and roads and public safety, they're pretty essential to a growing economy. When people decide if they want to come to Alaska, whether it's to live in a place like Moose Pass as a young family, or to be on base at J-Bear or Eielson, or live in many other places around the state, having a good quality school is important to that decision. And now for a while, families have begun to leave Alaska because our educational opportunities are limited. We had the colonel of J-Bear testify in committee yesterday, and they said that lack of educational opportunities was the #1 challenge on J-Bear right now. Guys, it's a big deal. And people need to, I think, more clearly associate successful schools and successful education with a growing economy. Part of that solution to successful schools, it isn't just money. But I'll tell you what it's not either. It's not taking money that we're currently spending on public schools and giving it to another entity or another way of doing school and expect that that's magic either. It's not. The magic about being in a classroom with kids and teaching them, in my experience, or having my own kids, is setting high standards for kids and then encouraging them and helping them to achieve those high standards. Right now, what I've seen, unfortunately, in some schools and even districts, Matsu, for instance, they just passed a proposition where they're going to attract more students by lowering standards, lowering their graduation requirements. And this is an environment where we hear about accountability, accountability, accountability. Lowering standards is not more accountability. But they quit using that word, you'll notice. Now they're talking about reforms or policy changes. It's fascinating. So, Ben asked, so if I had the way to fix that, and if we really want to improve educational outcomes, you actually have to raise standards. You have to increase graduation requirements. What does that mean? That means you have to have more teachers to teach kids those classes. You have to provide some expectation that kids are going to be able to know and understand and do certain things before they move through stage gates of school. Does that mean necessarily that you're gonna hold kids back in 3rd grade if they don't know how to read, or they can't pass 8th grade because they can't do math? No. But families need to be clearly communicated with about what their students can do and what they should expect from their students because their students can do certain things. Kids respond to that. But right now, it seems like we have folks that have made it a stock and trade for them to take accountability away. And that's not okay. We need to have clear measurements of how well students are doing. We need to have expectation that students actually complete more credits in high school. And we need to know that when a student graduates, that they will have the ability to be an effective citizen in our state. So to communicate value of education, I think it's about being humble.
I don't think you need to sell people here on the value of education. I think the idea of revenue is the state problem. So I disagree with you. Oil in the short term is something to look for, but in the long term, that's not going to work either. Sales taxes are regressive. Property taxes can only go so far. A lot of the taxes, small taxes, are mostly progressive. The only progressive tax is an income tax. And that would be spread on not only the more well-to-do people here, but it would include people who come to work here in the state. And I've been so frustrated over the years, things like schools being affected by not considering an income tax.
Thank you.
How do you feel about income tax?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, like I mentioned to Bruce, only about half of the adults working population in this state actually works. So as we look at how we move our state forward, are we going to tax people who work? That's the question.
Taxes work by taxing people.
Yep. I understand. I get it.
I would pay taxes if we could have schools.
Yeah, me too.
And I understand. But do I support an income tax? I don't support an income tax.
And why is that?
Because I think it punishes people who work and come to Alaska to engage in commerce, and I don't think we should do that.
Where do you get your numbers for 50% of the population work?
Honestly, that's something that I've heard another well-respected local politicians say.
You might wanna research.
I don't know if that's true.
Okay.
But people will stop coming here if they don't have good schools.
Yes. Yep.
So you're basically saying that you would rather punish the people who live here instead of the people who are coming here to work? Because that's who pays for it. The people who stay here and live here year round, rather than having an income tax for the people that come up, or those 50% of the people that you say aren't working. You're benefiting them rather than the people who are working by not supporting an income tax.
If we have a state income tax, like, they aren't necessarily paying any more than they already are, because when you work in a state and then live in another state, you're getting an income tax in that state. And then when you fill out an Alaska income state tax return, and then you do it in the other one, you get a discount for what you're paying to that other state. So their income tax isn't going to change, it's just gonna get allocated to our state instead of all the way in like North Dakota or wherever we live.
Yeah, I would highly encourage you to reconsider your position on income tax. You're asking for our opinion.
It's confusing where you think you're getting money. You're not gonna tax oil companies, you're not gonna do an income tax, you're against, like, how are we, other than having a stagnant economy and just using what we have and cutting services, like, how are you proposing that we actually increase our, like, budgets? How are we making money in
We
this state?
decrease the subsidies to the oil companies. We never addressed
I'd love
that.
to hear the answer to that question, though. That was a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to close this deficit, and especially if we want to increase education.
How?
So, what we need to do is we need to take a look at and ask these questions. But I just asked for an updated financial model, and I haven't gotten it yet as far as what inputs we can take. But what I can tell you is there's money to be made by taxing companies that do business over the internet here. That's not a sales tax. So we don't tax large corporations that make money in the state via the internet. Amazon. There's money to be made there. Okay? I don't know how much yet. We'll see. Folks are interested in taxing S corporations. Hillport. It's about $130 million more in revenue. Okay? A lot of your neighbors on the other side of this district work for Hillport. That particular tax, rather unpopular with them. All right? So, well, as we look at the problem, we need to take it on balance as what are we going to do with our economy to move it forward, and answer those questions. That's what we have to do. So, how do we close that? The easiest things to do, pragmatically, this is not my desired outcome, but what I can tell you might happen. Okay? The easiest thing to do is have a smaller dividend and not tax more people. That may happen. I don't know. I can't tell the future.
You wanna know how many of us agree with you? When you're asking, I agree with you. A smaller dividend and, I say great.
Yeah.
Anybody else agree?
Every grade school kid gets a dividend.
Take theirs away.
No,
I
it's
think
not.
it has to be a combination of all of it. Income tax the oil companies, and a smaller dividend.
Senator, North Dakota has a population roughly the same as Alaska, 800,000. Their budget is very similar. They're an oil resource state now. They're a conservative state. Their governor now works for the president. They have an income tax. They have a smaller permanent fund, it's only $10 billion, but growing. They have an active, growing economy. Their schools are fully funded. They have everything in the school, from choir to band to extracurriculars, on the same budget.
Where's
So, they're not opposed to an income tax down there. They're not opposed to an income tax.
They have one, right?
They do have one. I came to Alaska when there was an income tax, it didn't put me off.
Right.
We're still gonna come to Alaska.
I just want to point out from the labor stats, Alaska.gov, it says that the adult unemployment rate in 2024 was 4.7%. Just to,
Yeah, for those that seek work. You have to be seeking work.
A lot of these 50% supposedly are working, are children, you know?
Yeah.
Or they're people who are staying at home and taking care of their
I'm a person who looks at a lot of where's the revenue, where's the accounts receivable. I understand, you know, when I look at the property values that could plummet around here if we don't have a school, it's just frightening. So I look at the income. And to back up what this young man has said, in the Alaska Beacon, only a couple of months ago, this statement was made. The overall Alaska economy and most Alaska families will end up paying more, potentially much more, to make up for the oil companies paying less. Put another way, many Alaska families will make less to subsidize the oil companies and their contractors making more. What is wrong with this picture? Do you not see anything wrong with this?
My job as the representative for 30-some thousand people is to help all of us as residents of the Kenai Peninsula understand each other. And many people feel like you do. Many of them do. a lot of people don't see things that same way. And there's a balance there that we have to strike if we're all gonna live in this society together. We have to figure out a way through that to come to an agreement on something to move forward.
Exactly what that young man said, balance.
And where's the balance for 10 years? It's been record profits versus struggling to get by. Where's the balance? Why is it so hard to, again, if we're not asking to tax them 100%, not even counting, small percentages. It's a combination of many factors that need to work here, not just, there's not just one solution here. We go, oh, blanket case and we're all fixed, you know? So why is it so hard to, do you think, are the oil companies gonna run away if we tax them 2% more? What's gonna happen if we tax the oil companies or reduce the subsidies? What will happen? What will happen for the regular citizen? What will happen?
There's been a lot of modeling done on that question, and I'm sure there will be more done. One model that was done with a study recently, and I don't have it offhand, was that if the per barrel credit changed, that oil companies would likely not change their rate. So that was one study. And if you ask an oil company about what their investment decisions might be, they're going to have a different answer. So the balance is, if you put oil taxes to a vote again in this district, increasing oil taxes would likely fail again by more than 60%. That's the balance. In the politics of possible, when we have to work together to find solutions, we can hold up this ideal, this perfect thing, and say we should do the perfect thing. But what do you do when you don't have the votes to achieve perfection in policy? What do you do?
Well,
So,
sorry, excuse me, just what do you do, Jesse, what do you do? So again, this problem has been going on for at least a decade plus, I would say. What have you been doing in a decade to move the needle for this balance? Again, things are way out balanced. We can all see that. The balance is way off. So you gotta move the needle a little bit, I think, in the little guy's favor to bring some balance back. What changes have been made in the last 10 years? Because I haven't seen any.
so I'm gonna let folks talk that haven't gotten to talk yet.
We have a
Are
question
you gonna
behind you.
extend beyond 7:30?
Yes. I'll stay here for pretty much as long as
Give us all the time.
So, I guess I haven't heard any thought on having an overall state tax. That's Wyoming has succeeded on it, and everybody that comes here gets to pay. Whether it's a tourist who live here or what, there's a luxury tax. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that there's a model in South Dakota where they have a tourism tax. I think that's a very interesting idea. And that is an interesting idea that would help our visitors bear the cost of infrastructure and other things that the state currently pays for. I think that's an interesting idea. However, you have many neighbors here in this community that don't like that idea at all. But I think that if we do need to raise taxes, that idea probably makes a lot of sense. Right? So in the borough, we're like the only borough, large municipality in our state that doesn't have a bed tax. Instead of having a bed tax as a borough.
I mean, it's nice to go to Anchorage and not have to pay taxes on stuff, but
Well, you
if
pay
it
bed
supports
tax.
our schools, then.
And they have a sales tax going on the ballot, I think, coming up next year.
Except for cigarette tax, they already have that. Cigarettes are cheaper here than they are in Anchorage.
Who hasn't gotten to talk yet? You haven't gotten to talk yet.
Sure. We'll go to roads and safety. So in Cooper Landing, they're building, they're redirecting the Sterling Highway. And so the Sterling Highway, as we drive on it now, you drove up from there, right?
I came down from Anchorage, but
Ah,
you know,
Yeah, what are the plans for the Sterling Highway there? I mean, there's potholes everywhere, I see cars pulled over with flat tires, getting towed away because they're hitting potholes on the shoulder, in the median. And they keep, patching it, but a patch job this time of year, everybody knows, is a Band-Aid that's falling off.
Yep. They have a project number assigned, DOT has a project number assigned to repave the existing alignment of the Sterling Highway, and they're hoping to start working on that in 2026. Part of what I get to do as chairman of the transportation committee, as well as being on the subcommittee for DOT's budget, is I get to ask questions that encourage DOT to actually move that project into the shovel-ready phase and actually execute that project, hopefully starting in 2026.
But they have told us in Cooper Landing that that is going to be a Band-Aid. And once the bypass goes through, they claim in our meetings in Cooper Landing that the borough will then be responsible, which I don't believe they're correct on that, but I don't think it should be done as a Band-Aid.
That's, Virginia, I agree with you. I don't know of any talks between state DOT and the Kenai Peninsula Borough for a road swap for that road. I am unaware of any. So they're going to have to maintain that road and keep it up. So the project that they have envisioned for summer after next is just a resurfacing. So shaving off the old top layer of pavement and paving new, that is a ban. That's not a long-term solution. That road will need significant reconstruction.
And same with coming here through Moose Pass, holy cow.
Yeah, what's the latest on that?
Yeah, what's the latest on Moose Pass Road?
Every time there's a barge,
Let's talk
here we
about
go.
Moose Pass Road for a minute. Did you have a specific question about the road?
No, I can wait till you're done.
Okay, so, project update, I see you all, come back to me. Okay, put your hand down.
Good, my hand's on the sleeve.
Project update on Moose Pass Road is, latest one we got from DOT, that the design was 95% complete, and they were going to work on completing that design sometime by this summer. But the next part of the project that I was hoping to hear from you all about was that DOT was going to begin directly contacting property owners about assessments and purchase of additional right-of-way that they need from the property. But I hadn't heard anything from this community specifically about that lately. So if and when you guys hear about DOT reaching out to talk to you about assessments and purchasing property in the right-of-way, I'd like to know how that process is going. I am well aware from talking with Jeff Estes and many others that the road project as envisioned by DOT is not acceptable to this community.
Right.
And it's not acceptable to me either, because I agree with you, it's not necessary in what they're trying to do. And it's very frustrating working with DOT and their inflexibility on things exactly like this. And I've said before, and I'll restate it here, but I'm committing to defending your interests as your community and make sure that this highway project works for you. Whatever we need to do, I'll fight on your guys' behalf to do that.
Can I speak directly to them?
So go and ask for someone to let him talk.
First, Bruce. Okay, political question maybe. I've been doing a lot of research on this, and I was sharing the information up to a point. Didn't get much of response whatsoever, but I am able to go on the DOT site and find out what they're going to do here. One of the things they say they're not gonna do is put in passing lanes in Moose Pass. But when you dig around long enough, which we did, you can find out where the stip is and what they're asking the feds for, which is $90 million. And their primary reason is to put in passing lanes in Moose Pass. And I've got that in writing. In fact, I gave you a copy tonight. So what is it they're doing? Are they lying to us? Or are they lying to the feds to get the money? Because either way, it's $90 million, but no, folks, we're not gonna put in passing lanes here, but yes, that's our primary reason, they're gonna put in passing lanes. What is that? Can you explain that?
I don't have an explanation for that, but I can tell you with 100% certainty that DOT has a significant credibility gap with a lot of its stakeholders. Yeah, in politics I've learned, I guess, we don't call each other liars, because it makes people really mad, but you guys all know, like, stuff gets said by agencies and you know that's not the facts on the ground, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You guys know what's going on. And so that's why I wanna know from you, if you get letters about appraisals for your property or offers to purchase based on a right of way, let me know. I wanna help. And also, when they come out with a final design that comes out for comment, I'm happy to work with you on that and represent your interests and fight for you guys. Cause this community is important. Your history is important and it means something. And that's important to me. So,
Jesse, I just got, before I forget about this, what's your title with the, commission in Juneau?
I'm the state senator that represents.
Right, and you're on what, committee you were talking about?
I chair the transportation.
Transportation, DOT falls under that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What I'd like to ask you, and since we paid for your salary, look into that question for him and get back to us. Sure. That's a, do you know the guys? I wanna hear that type of answer from you. You work for us. I'm gonna look into that for you. Could you do that?
Absolutely.
Great. Yeah.
Love to hear your answer on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like, where are they?
So, you guys are interested in the final design or the preferred alternative design of the project and where passing lanes are going.
Already know where they're going to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna call on other people that haven't gotten to talk yet. Any other questions about the road?
I forgot this guy. I forgot that guy.
I'm coming back to Dave.
He's gonna come back.
So, I should say I'm from Pennsylvania, so income tax, that's cool, property taxes, bring it. A toll booth to come onto the peninsula.
Oh, man.
I don't care, that's it, easy pass.
People from the valley think Yep. You ever heard of Huey Long? I'll tell you later.
One question about, so earlier you said that we're not collecting taxes from internet companies, but Amazon is collecting 7% tax from us. Are they, yeah, are they paying that?
Yes.
Okay,
But to my knowledge, they're not paying corporate tax.
okay.
Now that we're back on taxes, can I just talk about the tourism industry working group who's looking at assessing whether or not, the borough should charge a 12% bed tax, which is the same as Anchorage. An ordinance was brought forward by 2 assembly members and to put the tax into place. My concern at the time that happened was, they didn't say where the money was gonna go. So this working group is gonna bring back their assessment and analysis to the assembly, and then the assembly's gonna see what we're gonna do. Again, where is the money gonna go? I've talked to a couple of them, and why can't some of it go to education? We can, one of the things that the borough can do is tax, and then they can decide where that tax goes. So that would be, if that comes up on the agenda at the assembly, that could be another thing that you could call your assembly members and support that, bed tax, and yeah, it would be through the whole borough, so even B&Bs out here would get charged a 12% bed tax, but say we, you know, I think it was calculated at about $5 million. It goes to education.
And email
all the assembly members, not just me. But, because it takes 9, I mean, it takes 5 out of 9 to pass.
How about all the ships with beds though?
Anyone else who hasn't asked a question? Did I answer your question?
No.
Okay, you're next.
Okay. I've got a couple of questions.
Okay.
Okay.
What's your
First,
name?
Linda Dickerson. First of all, I'd like to know how these people are surviving that aren't working. I mean, you gotta have a roof over your head, you gotta have food, medical. Where are they getting the money from? That's my first question. The second one's a little controversial, but how much has the state paid to house, to clothe, to feed, medical for the illegal immigrants that were shipped to us? How much have we spent on that we could have been using for our education?
I'm not familiar. I'll just be very honest, 'cause that's what I do.
I mean, my heart goes out
Yeah.
to them. They came over here wanting a better life. But are they working? Some of them are. I know there's a lot that aren't working.
So I'm not familiar with illegal immigrants that have come to Alaska. What I can tell you is that there are quite a few organizations in the state that when refugees from, let's say, the war in Ukraine or others come to Anchorage, they help those people, and these are nonprofits, this is not state dollars, but they're nonprofits that help those
They're
people
not on
find jobs.
they're not on Medicaid.
I don't
or
know.
Welfare.
Yeah, I don't know, and I can't talk about
Yeah, I'm
those
just
folks, 'cause I don't know.
kind of curious.
But I'm willing to know, and I'd like to learn about those types of
Yeah.
things, so that we can eliminate, if there's fraud or abuse, we can eliminate that. And if people come to this country or come to our state, they should hopefully want to work and be productive. Or they've worked all their lives and now they're building retirement here for themselves, right?
Yeah.
So I'm all for making sure that Alaskans are able to work or enjoy their life's work in their retirement because we have a secure economy and secure infrastructure in place here. But I understand that none of that's free.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to know how these people don't work. I mean, there's jobs everywhere you go. It says, you know, wanted. There should not be anybody that's able physically to get up and work to be on welfare. Okay, a month or two, you're having a hard time, you know, get a little help, but after that, you should be working.
And that's why you're seeing, and there have been conversations about work requirements for Medicaid that have happened in other states.
Yeah.
And now they're having those conversations at the national level. So that, and those conversations are gonna play out around dinner tables and around rooms just like this.
Yeah.
And those conversations, they don't happen without people getting left out or suffering harm from those conversations because of how the federal government operates.
Well, when I was growing up, you didn't work, you didn't eat. You learned real fast to get out there and do something.
That's right.
Yep.
I mean, it might take them starving a little, and maybe they will get out and work.
And I think that the people who can, should,
Should.
but we also need to make sure that people who have earned benefits or that deserve benefits because they're legitimately injured or they have a legitimate
Yeah.
issue that they're dealing with.
I'm with you on that.
Right, but, so what happened, we've done this as a country a couple times before, in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And when I was a young kid, my grandpa lost his disability because of reforms that went through. My grandpa couldn't work anymore because he had a very severe back injury, he was a millwright in a paper mill. So for months and months, my grandpa would have to fight with the government to get a benefit that he earned, that he paid into. So we have to make sure that we aren't taking away stuff from folks who legitimately have earned it.
Right, I'm with you on that.
Mr. News.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the 1B part of the Cooper Landing bypass, getting it into the statewide STIP so we don't have to wait till 2032. The second thing is, state's got a prohibition against dedicated funds that didn't exist before statehood. The school tax is one of those that's allowed to be. I'd like you to ask the people at your meetings, how many of them would be in favor of having the $100 first paycheck school tax put back in their paycheck? I think you're gonna find out most of them would. And that includes all those people that are coming in here and working this summer, they gotta pay their $100, and their kids are never gonna be here. They pay it. Everybody gets a paycheck. It's so easy to do bureaucratically because it just goes to DED. So if you would ask people that, I'd be really happy.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that, but I wanna, people like to identify certain places where tax money goes. And in my experience in studying government, because I like that, as well as being involved, we can dedicate all the revenue you want from a tax, but oftentimes that supplants revenue that current thing is getting, and it doesn't supplement revenue.
You can write the law so it supplements.
Yep, you can. Yep.
You're the law guy.
Yep, you can, but it's like playing whack-a-mole sometimes, so just be aware, you can't always fix problems that are created by people with better policy. You have to be vigilant and elect good people, hopefully I'm one, to execute people's will. And that's what's most important. But policy, sure. Policy, absolutely, we can direct things to happen, but it's meetings like this and influence from folks like this that carry out that policy to do what you guys want.
Do you think the will of the room would be reinstate the state school tax?
Show hands.
Anything for the school.
Take my freaking PFD, I'd rather have a school.
Yes.
Marcus has a question though.
Okay.
That's a big majority.
I saw.
My question is, when is this decision gonna be made first? When are you deciding about whether you're gonna close and make that door or not?
Okay. So thank you for the question. I'm thankful that the answer's not me.
No, I know not you, I meant not you. Everybody decide, when are they going to vote on this? Who's gonna make the decision? Is it gonna come to a vote?
So Virginia, as your school board member, I hate to put you on the spot, but you can talk about that specifically.
I'm not positive I can answer specifically when, but I can tell you Monday, it will be discussed. And I would encourage everyone, whether you're from Seward or those past, to reach out to all the board members, Board of Education at kpbsd.org, because I don't wanna be the only one hearing. I want it all to go to everyone, but we have work sessions scheduled. If you don't know how to access board docs, contact me, find a friend who does, so that you can find out the times of each of our meetings and work sessions. And then for the evening meeting, we have public testimony open. You can, if this meeting unfortunately isn't Homer, but it's always available for you to call in by Zoom, either on a computer or a phone, and please do. I don't know that we're not taking a vote on, there is not going to be a vote that I'm aware on Monday, but there will be discussion and there will be continued meetings happening in the next.
Starting for the school year of 2026, it would be closed?
If there's yes, it would be next this coming school.
So we should call in on Monday, or Zoom in on Monday?
Pardon me?
So on Monday, we should call or Zoom in?
This Monday, the general meeting at 6 o'clock is when there will be time for public testimony. Earlier in the day, there will be discussions that you can listen to, but you won't be able to speak.
Let me just talk a little bit about what I think will happen. I think it's really awful that we have to have this conversation because there's so many unknowns. And just to go back to what I first said, we're having this conversation about this many school closures because there is such a wide gap in the amount of money that was received last year to the amount of money that results from a base student allocation that's in statute of 5960. What I think will happen is I don't think your school is going to close. But that doesn't mean that you all shouldn't advocate for it. Okay? You should. Is it possible? Yes. But I don't think it will happen. But you need to advocate and talk about why your school is important. The most important way that you can advocate about your school is yes to the school board and yes to the borough assembly. But it has to start at a statewide level. Because what happens is these very significant school cuts and school closures and communities having meetings like this, it's kind of like an ogre that comes out of the swamp and only visits like 1 or 2 villages at a time, right? And if the ogre's not terrorizing your village, well, you're aces, right? Well, guess what? Eventually the ogre's gonna come for a lot of folks. And so you have to tell folks your story. So Catch Can last year, they went through, and they will again, some pretty painful adjustments to how they do school. And their kids lost a lot of educational opportunities last year. So you need to tell your story together with folks from all over the state about what's happening. And you do that by testifying on the budget, testifying by writing emails to your state legislators, the finance committees in the House and the Senate. Your stories matter. Making presentations there matter. But I don't want you to think that you have a nuclear situation with your school closing when I don't think there's a good chance of that happening. Okay? I don't like, and I hate having this conversation because of what's possible instead of what's probable. I feel like I need, because I don't want to be ginning up, or part of ginning up a bunch of fear that's maybe unfounded, but it's a possibility, okay?
And can I follow up real quick with, what the board is going to do is, we are gonna create 3 budget scenarios. One budget scenario will be if there is a BSA increase of 380, or some 340, something like that. The next one will be if there's an increase of 680, and then 1,000. We'll have 3 different budget scenarios and what kind of cuts would have to happen with those 3, and then it'll be dependent on what happens with the state, like summer. So, again, no decision would be final until we know what happens at the state level.
I was just thinking about the state level, and you mentioned the governor a couple of times, you seem to understand his way of thinking. And I believe I've heard, and I'm a teacher this past year, I believe I have heard him, like if the BSA gets passed to whatever level, he has said things that schools, public schools, are not doing a good job, so we shouldn't give them more money to continue to not do a good job. And maybe vetoing something that otherwise might have passed. What do you think his mind is on that at this time?
I don't pretend to know or understand the governor's way of thinking on that. But what I can tell you is that he is very insistent on passing a bill that contains his language on something called open enrollment. We have looked at the open enrollment concept that is occurring in his bill, Senate Bill 82. And it's concerning because of a couple of things. His open enrollment provision creates a provision for transportation plans. That's not defined. Meaning that someone from one school district could go to school in another school or school district, and the school would have to pay for the transportation of that student to go there. That's not defined what that is. Does that mean someone going from Wasilla to Palmer? Does it mean someone going from Savona to Soldotna or Nanwalek to Homer? That's not well defined.
We have open enrollment.
We do have open enrollment, but we're not required to pay for transportation for kids to go to different schools. We asked the commissioner about this in committee, And she said, well, yeah, maybe it would just be close, but not far. Laws don't usually work that way. They don't usually just apply for some. I'm interested to know and hear more about what that means. I see you're next. Another thing about the governor's open enrollment language is his open enrollment language says that students will be able to attend a school on a first come, first served basis. That's problematic for a number of reasons. Number one, for charter schools, they have lottery systems that work really well to provide equal opportunity for folks who want to attend charter schools. We asked the commissioner, well, another senator did on the record, if this open enrollment provision would cancel out these lottery systems, and she said yes. So my concern is that a child attending a school, let's say in Kenai, they could be displaced by another child who attends a school in Soldotna if they signed up late. Because first come, first served. That's the thing that we need more clarity about. We're willing to codify our current practice on the Kenai Peninsula and in other places about open enrollment as it currently happens, based on availability and how things happen right now. We largely have a lot of options for how people want to attend school. And we want to make sure that those options are protected and preserved. So, I don't know what the governor will do.
Should we write to him as well as assembly and board members, you think?
Sure. The governor kind of keeps his own confidence about stuff, and I'm not sure. That's the best I can do. Oh, what was your name? I'm sorry.
Sandra Barrett.
Okay, cool. What's your name?
Meredith, you said that you do not believe that the Use Fast school will close. And I asked, what are the facts of what's behind that opinion?
Okay, so what I think will happen is I think the legislature will be able to fund, and I don't think that the governor will reduce funding below what was provided last year. If we have the same amount of funding next year as we did last year, that means our school district deficit shrinks to, kind of fuzzy on the numbers, but it shrinks to about $6 million.
So you think there's momentum behind at least keeping the status quo as it was last year?
Well, yes.
Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Still be a deficit, but not a 17 million.
Yes. That's the primary reason.
I just want to reiterate, last time we had a meeting, Heather Lindquist actually made a great point. And I don't know if it's legal, she said she didn't know either, but the idea of using kids, or 50% of kids, PFDs towards education.
Yeah, I call it the Happy Meal idea, where it's like kids get a child-sized version of the dividend, and then once they hit 18, they get a full adult-sized version, and the kid-size, the difference would go to fund education.
Yep.
Another interesting thought of using the money that we have already.
They're 529, so there's 5 guys there. So, I mean,
Yeah, I like that, it also, the parent or family there.
Yep.
I had one more question that I asked Senator Bill yesterday, and and I just want to get your take on it, and maybe you don't have a good answer, but so I asked him because Alaska State Statute 14.17.905, facilities constituting a school, says that if a community has above 10 average daily membership, then they can have a school facility. And my comment to Senator Bill was that, hey, Moose Pass has 17, right? And we're not the same community as Seward. So legally, how can they consolidate schools as if they were within the same community? And Senator Bill told me that any school on the road system can be bused to any other school regardless of distance, and that didn't matter. Do you have a different opinion on that situation or laws? Is there some other way that we could frame that in our letters, or maybe the school borough is a better audience for that question? Is there like a best management practice of how long little kids should be on the bus? Like, for example, Miss Charlotte over here and Miss Leah and Miss Abigail, they live at mile what? 35. So mile 35 is up by the Y. And Chris, your little girl, Louise, what mile does she live at?
We're, what, 36?
35.5.
Oh,
Yeah, and then what mile is Seward School at? Like mile 3? Yeah.
The Y's 37. Yeah.
So is there like a best management practice on how long some of these kids should be bused?
Twice a day.
Twice a day.
So I understand. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know the answer to that question. I can tell you that the intent of that law and the history behind it was communities that have, thank you for coming. You guys all know how to get a hold of me? Okay. Is that we have Governor Hammond's wife to thank for that. Communities having schools were really important to her. And
As it should be.
yep, and Moose Pass certainly fits that definition. I'll get you a legal opinion on that.
Thank you.
That's fine. Oh, I will.
Great.
We can do that.
Send that to me too.
Yeah, we can do that. But you asked me like, is it against the law or not? We'll get you a legal opinion and let you know. But the spirit of the law is that communities like Moose Pass would and should have a school.
What?
A school. You would and should have a school.
On that subject, and with the
JD,
with the hopes that people do actually reach out to the borough, to all the representatives, could we hear, because there's a whole lot more to this Moose Pass school closing down that is negative that I know other people have talked about. One of those is the long bus rides. The other problem is not just the length, but the fact that we are on the other side of an avalanche path on both directions, whether that be Cooper Landing, because I've heard some talk that we would keep Cooper Landing open, close Moose Pass, and they can just go over there. Not as long as a bus ride, but there is an avalanche path at the Y, and then there's an avalanche path south of us. So if our small children, our kids are, or our child's above Moose Pass school grade now, but if there are small children on the buses and they get stuck on the other side, that's not safe. That's far from safe. And what are some, can I ask, what, just some other issues that we would have with the Moose Pass school closing that we can talk about when we get all of the?
Our child's gonna be enrolling in 2 years, and if the Moose Pass school closes, we're considering leaving Moose Pass, because part of the reason my wife grew up here in Moose Pass, went to school here in Moose Pass, part of the reason we moved here to raise our family is the school, that is close and is in our community. And, you know, we're a young family that is working and doing things here, and if there's no school, it takes away half of our reason, the other half is our family being here, and we're seriously gonna be considering leaving the state from this one.
Well, not to mention too, the Moose Pass school start time is great for these young kids, where I have a daughter who's in the middle school, same start time as the elementary school in Seward, but our kids will have to get up at like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning to catch the bus just to get to Seward. I mean, that can't be good for them. I mean, to function all day. I mean, not for my kids at least. Like, I don't want, I mean, that's insane.
And when do they get home?
Sophia gets home at 3 o'clock, yeah, 3:15.
It's almost 12 hours.
So that's insane. I mean, my youngest will be in kindergarten next year, and I can't imagine waking her up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get her ready for school, to catch the bus at 6:15, whenever, you know, just to get to school on time in Seward. I mean, I think that's just crazy.
It is crazy.
Yes, ma'am. What's your
My name
name?
is Katie.
And what's your name?
Wendy.
Wendy,
Yeah.
okay.
In response to what Marcus and Dee asked, two of my children went to Moose Pass School, and it takes a village to raise children. And Moose Pass is the place to raise children, and the village always participates. The kids, our Moose Pass kids, former students, present students, and future students, they have an opportunity to live in a place where they have a generations of people who actually care about them and that they interact with. I have a list of 7 different organizations that our school kids work with and participate with on a yearly basis, more than just one time a year, just regularly throughout the school year. An example is our wonderful library. On early release days, they have a movie, so the kids come from school, go to the library, watch the movie, get out, and their parents can collect them at the regular time that school would close. A knitting club after school. Where else are they gonna have that? If they're bused to Seward, that's not gonna happen. And again, multi-generational people are involved with these young children in developing. I also have a question about enrichment. And this might be more of a local question, does the west side of the peninsula have music programs and art programs for their, so that Kenai and they don't have those?
Oh, the west side.
Yeah.
In some schools, not many anymore, it's less and less, but there are a few.
Okay, so are our children in Seward and Moose Pass any less valuable that they don't have even a part-time art or music program that the west side of the peninsula does? And that kind of stuff has been going on for a long time, even when my kids were in high school. The west side of the peninsula has been funded much more richly with simple things like a chemistry class in high school. And I think that's about it.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Katie.
So,
One of the things, just for data, and it's important to know, as we talk about what's available at schools, is lots of people in a community going to a school create economy and scale that allows more educational opportunities to happen for the kids there. In 2015, the district decided that they were going to implement what's called programmatic staffing to actually give middle to smaller schools more money per student to provide for more opportunities, just like you mentioned. However, populations of schools have gone down relatively, and now even that additional money that students get in Moose Pass and Seward and Manilchik and Anchor Point and other places for programmatic staffing, that's not enough to provide those opportunities anymore. But that still happens. You guys, education is a constitutionally mandated thing that we have to do. It is vitally important for our economy and for people who choose to live in our state and communities just like this one all across Alaska. It's important enough to me that I made it my life's work. I fight for kids to be able to get a good education. I fight for them to get real education and real learning that's not just signing off and passing them along. Okay? If we want to get serious about improving education, we need to fund it to a level that is capable of producing the results we expect. Means we have to be willing to invest in ourselves. My mom always used to say, garbage in, garbage out. Do we spend a lot of money on education in this state? Yeah, we do. It costs a lot of money. But as we go forward, we have to answer the question, are we willing to invest what it takes to produce the results we expect? And investment is dollars, but also investment is expectation, and it's accountability to meet those expectations. We can do that, and I know that you all are great at that.
Just to kind of add to that point, and what JV was saying, what we can talk to our assembly members about is that we have a very long list of Moose Pass graduates that have gone on to Seward High School to be valedictorian and salutatorian. So we know that Moose Pass School is not just kind of a placeholder for their education, but it's growing these students who go on to be top of their class in high school and beyond. So that's a good point to bring up to our assembly members also when we're
National
writing.
Honor Society,
Share of our site,
Moose Pass Kid right here, valedictorian. Yeah.
Some of you haven't said anything, and that's okay, but I want you to have opportunities. Everyone should feel welcome to ask questions or just speak about why you came here, so don't be afraid.
I'll fill up the air. Couple things. Cindy and Virginia represent all of us. When they go to these meetings in the Central Peninsula, they are one against many. Anytime any of you can participate at their meetings, their impact is much greater. Senator Bjorkman carries that same responsibility down to Juneau, and I've watched him grow into this job. So now you are the chair of DOT. Committee. Softball question first. And then on a different topic, are you in favor of returning defined benefits for public employees and teachers? Separate topic. I'm gonna read just this bullet point that I got here. It may be possible to convince the Federal Highway Administration that Moose Pass area, this is the highway, is unique and deserves special exemptions. The DOT has zero incentive to robustly pursue any exemption. I believe federal administration, particularly at this moment, would entertain a modification to rules. I do not believe the administration or bureaucracy will attempt to move this issue. The Alaska DOT continues to promote the highway project that will decimate the nature of Moose Pass. Commissioner Anderson and DOT staff state their hands are tied, and they'll tell you this in committee. They're tied because of the federal highway rules. Due to the regulations amended, federal highway funds pay $90 for every 10 the state pays. It's tremendous revenue into the state. How can the legislature move this thing forward? It's going to take the Federal Highway Administration being contacted and modify their rules so that the ditches don't have to be 15 feet or whatever the particular issue is. It's not going to get done by DOT. They have no incentive to do it. And the advisory group to Commissioner Anderson, and I've been at that meeting, are all contractors. All the paving companies, the contractors that do the work, they'd be well-intentioned, they're smart guys, but they have a vested interest.
Yep.
So to answer your first question first, Bruce, then I'll come back to roads. Yes, I support a return to defined benefit option. Here's why. The defined benefit option has been presented in the legislature over the last 3 years. Shares risk in how to pay for the past service costs of employees that retire. And that under that model, it ensures that the state doesn't fall into a state of unfunded liability. It's another word for past service costs. If it were to, if markets don't perform or if other calculations are missed, that has that trust fund or that annuity fund fall below a state of 90% fundedness, everyone pays in more money into the system. Current employees would pay in more, retirees would get less of a benefit of the cost of living, and the employers would pay in more as well. And that math works to keep that plan funded without significant cost increases to the state to pay for that unfundedness. Because that gets recalculated very often, and very small increases, very small percent increases into that fund would true up that fund into the future. It avoids having big deficits in a pension plan because it's designed to stay funded. It answers the question of who pays for that past service cost. And that's retirees, employees, and employers. Dealing with the road alignment through Moose Pass, I think it is important that you all engage our federal delegation with the story of your community. Senator Sullivan, Senator Murkowski, and Congressman Begich, they need to hear about why this road alignment exception that you're asking for, why it's important. They need to hear about the history of the store. They need to hear about the history of this town and why keeping this small town history alive is important to all of you. And as we were talking, Bruce, I was thinking about ways that we can incentivize DOT to make adjustments, and I'll keep thinking on that. But you're right, if there is a time for exceptions to be made, I think it would be now.
So former Representative Young said that if any agency that he would have problems with dealing with would be the state DOT. So it's not an easy nut to crack.
Other questions or comments, or, yeah?
Whenever you wanna talk or ask questions about the road, I can educate you a little bit more.
Okay.
First thing, I finally had to get a couple of attorneys involved in this. Also, luckily, and I don't give out names, but I have almost a direct line into Doge. And I don't mean Alaska Doge. In Alaska, the Doge is aware now of this $90 million debacle that's going through here, or that's going to attempt to go through. We'll see what happens now, but that is underway now, that's official. Now to kind of make the picture a little bit easier to understand, I'm not just doing this myself, I have several other people that are working for me to do this, to collect this information. I'm gonna start off in Seward. You know about the boat dock down there, the new one that's coming in. That port will be open in April of 2026. Okay, in 2023, we would have an average of one cruise ship a day come in. And then, of course, you've got the train out and the train back. The train goes through part of my property, so I get to see it every day. And then we've got, I'll just say 20 buses. Now, I talked with the fellow in this room about that, and I said, well, when they get this new dock in, I says, you're gonna have more ships in. It's gonna create more traffic, and he assured me it wouldn't. That was wrong. This last summer, we had 2 ships in at a time. I'm going somewhere with this story. But with 2 ships in at a time, 4,000 passengers each, the train was running 4 times a day by my house, every day. The buses, instead of 20 a day, were 40 a day. Okay, now when they complete this boat dock down there, $160 million boat dock and a $45 million battery, I understand that, but that's irrelevant. When they complete that, they'll have 3 to 4 ships able to come in per day. I even know the names of the cruise lines now. So when that happens, they're going to have, instead of 40 buses a day, somewhere between 60 and 80 buses a day. Now, Moose Pass, from mile 25.5 to the Y, is the only choke point where you can't do 55. You can go out of Seward and you can do 55 miles an hour up to Trail River. Once you get to my driveway at 26.5, it starts slowing down again. They want us, this is where one of the projected, the northbound passing lane's supposed to be. That's why they want to take a big bite out. mile 27.5 southbound passing line. Okay, so what they wanna do is they wanna open this up because that's the choke point. You got that much traffic that's going to be coming through here. Now, compile on top of that. When and if they do this, you see, I don't know if you've driven down on the other side of Trail River, but they did that section out there by the knife store. And it's taken them years to do that. What they've gotta do in here is more delicate. It's gonna take them at least 4 to 5 years to do this. So this is gonna it's gonna create another problem by doing this. They should just be able to come in here and for between $25 and $30 million, repave this road to the Y. This road has lasted a long time, well over 10 years. They can come by here, repave that, but instead, what they wanna do, what the DOT wants, is they want the 90 million to do this section. And they're gonna do this, that, and this, like they're talking about drainage ditches. I've already marked it off. There's 3 miles of drainage ditch. Once you get down and around the curve past the salmon hatchery, the road's elevated. You can't dig trenches down there. So this thing with the drainage ditches, oh yeah, we're gonna make them a foot deeper, 3 miles of them. Where's the difference between the 30 million it would take to pave this road versus the 90 million to do whatever it is they wanna do? This is what Doge is gonna be looking into. And again, it goes back with the cruise lines. They're gonna be coming through. We've actually got them filmed. We know the bus increase, the bus traffic, let's just call it that. And again, buses rolling by here at 55 miles an hour. When you do put in a passing lane, you can look it up. You can Google it yourself. You can even look at that brochure that I sent you there. When you put in a passing lane, cars don't slow down. They speed up. Common sense. DOT says, yeah, we're gonna put in traffic calming measures. What's the first thing on a traffic calming measure? Speed bumps. You think you're gonna put speed bumps out there and then plow the road? It's hard enough to get them to plow the road and it's flat. Put speed bumps out there, try plowing a 10. There's a lot going on that doesn't meet the eye. But again, they wanna create this freeway through this part of town. It's gonna be twice as noisy. People are gonna get in accidents pulling out their driveway. So this whole thing, I think is, well, I don't wanna go down the road there, but it's all about money. It definitely is. Again, this is what they're shooting for right now. So if we can get through with Doge, hopefully we can stop this altogether, get them to pave it and be done with it in a month, and we're all good. Everybody will enjoy this and it'll be the quaint little town that we have grown to know and love. So hopefully that educates you a little bit there, but you can verify every last thing that I told you. And that's what's going on. So personally, I really want to make a push back on there. And again, that's why I've had to go to the length of the attorneys there, because they'd love to get their name up in lights. So hopefully that says something there for
Yeah,
you.
thank you. And we'll be in contact about that. Like I said, I'll ask about the passing lanes and the design and what they're planning.
Can
Along with just like the transportation corridor that Moose Pass is, we also have the railroad going through, and starting last year, there was really an increase in the night trains.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of water here and a lot of trestles and a lot of whistle blowing at night. And we live by the Victor Creek trestle, and the train would go by almost every night, and it would blow its horn 6 to 8 times per pass at the Victor Creek trestle.
No, my kids would run in the middle of the night screaming, terrified of
We've
that.
got
horn.
all of them here.
If you're close to Victor Creek, you got another surprise coming.
Oh.
Because they're gonna be setting in a new track over there, that big mountain of dirt that's down there. That's all gonna start disappearing once they set up this track, because they're gonna do it to have, it's 8 cars. They'll bring in 8 cars at a time at night, and they'll load all that dirt that's in that big mountain, and then they're gonna take it wherever they're taking it, but that's already been approved.
Anyway,
I can work on whistle train whistles.
thank you, thank you. That is the correct answer, I appreciate that, just the quality.
I can't make any promises on train whistles, but I can definitely advocate for no night train whistles.
That would be.
Or even just a song if you want.
Yeah, they could do a song too.
Yeah, a song too would be fine, but like the holding 8, 9 times, I mean, it's terrifying, it wakes you out of a dead sleep. It's
Senator,
scary.
do you think the legislature has the votes to override on the governor's veto on the BSA?
It depends
On what, the amount?
on what's in the bill, the amount, and on what legislators hear from their constituents. That's what it depends on.
Yeah, 'cause you can't override line items unless you override the whole bill, correct?
The governor has line item veto power over the appropriation.
Yeah.
And it takes 75%, so 45 members override a line item veto in the budget.
Okay, so you can do it line by line?
Yes.
You can do line, okay, great.
In a policy bill, it takes 2/3 vote. Okay? Yes, ma'am, I was coming to you.
Jesse, I'm not from this community, I live a little further over, but why can't they just do a bypass?
We can't just put it back there behind the town.
Why can't they do that?
Just move the road over there. Then you leave the old road here, it's like Talkeetna, you go zip and
Use
fast.
people's water, all of the
That
water
people
comes down there.
depend on water.
So if the state gave you water, if the state gave you water and the road ran up there, you wouldn't have any issues here.
I don't want state water.
Well, the other thing
I'll
is the ground up
take
there is
the
clay in a
Travis
certain
over
part and
state
it
water.
Just the
won't
old
hold.
bridge is right over there by the other bridge.
40 years.
I have one question, and I'm naive at this stuff here, but I know what the PFD fund is. So if the PFD fund, is that, required, is that a federal or a state law that the oil companies pay everyone at PFD?
It's a state law.
It is a
And so how the dividend works is the permanent fund was set up in the Constitution so that our state would be able to take finite money that our state makes off of oil and stretch that resource so that it could be used for years and generations to come. The dividend is a state statute that was created after the permanent fund itself was set up. And there's big history to that. The original dividend, as envisioned by Governor Hammond, was that people would get $50 per year out of that fund for every year that they lived in Alaska, and it would cap at $1,000, 20 years. Okay? Some people, very well-meaning, I'm sure, called the Zobels, they sued and said, we don't like that plan, we don't think it's fair. And so they sued and it was overturned because they said that was discriminatory, you couldn't discriminate based on how long someone had lived in the state of Alaska. You have to treat everybody the same. So then the per capita dividend was instituted after that, which resulted in the current statutory formula, which people are largely familiar with and had been followed up until 2018 or so, 2016, okay? But that's a state law. And like other state laws, that's subject to appropriation by the legislature.
Okay, where I'm going with this is, me personally, and don't anybody throw rocks here, but I would like to see, instead of getting a dividend check once a year, I would like to see that go all towards the school system. And one of the reasons is, I have, like everybody in here, has some kind of a household budget. Okay, I've got a budget. When I look at the dividend check, I don't care what it is. That to me is either a Christmas present or a birthday present to myself. And it's different every year. I don't care about it. I don't run my household off of that. The kids are our future. I'm old. I'm gonna be on the other side of the lawn before you know it, but these kids are growing up. They need the education. So if there was a form right now to sign on here to say, hey, take your dividend, give it to that school, I'd do it in a heartbeat. You bring one, I'll do it. If if people, what's that?
You can't do that.
But it
You
doesn't.
can't?
But it doesn't give you an option.
Oh, they don't have to do it.
No.
Direct.
Yeah, I want it to go to the school here. I think there's, you know, if we're giving up our money, we should at least have a say-so of which school it goes to. Me, I'm pro Moose Pass, I'd like to see it go over there. I don't know of, I can't fathom people that are gonna lose their house if they don't get a dividend once a year. I can't fathom people are gonna starve to death if they don't get a dividend once a year. I can't comprehend this.
Half my fuel. There are Alaskans and many Alaskans, and for good reason, that have a very close felt connection to that dividend. And what it's meant to them throughout the course of their family, and people have grown up with that dividend. And there are many, many opinions about what should be done with the dividend or what should not be done with the dividend. Having a dividend is very, very important because it secures the principal of the fund. It makes that savings account, that's about $80 billion, it makes that savings account worth something to everybody. So people have a vested interest in, as a state, us not spending from the corpus or the principal of that fund. It is vitally important, I strongly believe, to pay a dividend so that it maintains value to all
To
Alaskans.
make it $100 a person and leave it at that, use the rest towards the schools, to me, that's the best investment we can make is in our kids and their education. But again, that's just my opinion. Some people want that dividend because they're gonna use that for their Christmas presents that year, or whatever they're gonna use it for, but they have to have it. But if everybody got, say, $100 dividend, if you got, you know, a husband, wife, and 4 kids, and each, you know, $100 check to each one, put the rest in the schools. I don't know, that's just my opinion, so
Thank you for sharing.
I'll leave it at that.
That's okay. Oh, over here, new person.
Mr. Bjorkman,
Yeah.
can I leave? But I want to thank you for your continued support for our community.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Bye, Phil. Bye, Judy.
It was, yeah, we were able to secure in the capital budget last year some air masks and jacks for the fire service here. And I was good. I was thankful we were able to do that. Other questions? Oh, right there.
So
no,
since
go back.
you're on the BFD,
Yeah.
has there ever been a discussion about people who just moved to the state and live here for the year? I mean, obviously, I moved to the state, lived here a year, applied for the PFD, thought that was great. So, but limiting people who just come up here longer than a year, making it longer than a year so that you're staying and you're, you know, being a vital part of Alaska versus
Like you can't get a PFD until you've been here 5 years, is that what
5
you're saying?
years or 2 years or, I mean.
Interesting. I don't know. To answer your question, I don't know if people have considered that, or if that would.
Or if you're born here, you're automatically enrolled, like it is. But if you just move up here with your family of 6 and,
Yeah.
you know, you live a year, then all of a sudden, you know, it just keeps
Probably-
adding more people to the PFD.
Under that scenario that you just described, I think that scenario
That's the
definitely runs afoul of the Zobel decision and equal protection, right? We could have a whole other conversation if there actually is an equal protection clause in the 14th Amendment, that's really off the rails, but.
Well, I was just curious.
But as we understand the law
I'm
currently,
done with questions.
I don't know if it's been considered to have a longer waiting period, but what I do know is that you can't have two systems. You can't have one system for people that were born here and one system for people that.
Soaking it all in. Senate Finance passed the change of the split, where it was 25-75, then it was 50-50, now it's 75 to the state, 25 to the citizens on the revenue from the dividend. That's gonna come on the floor, are you gonna be voting for it or against it?
So, I don't think they've heard that bill yet.
No, it's out of committee.
Yeah, 17.
It's out of committee, it went 17 zip out of finance. So when it comes to the floor, are you gonna go with the 50-50 we had last year, or are you gonna go with the new 75-25?
So we had a 75-25 last year. Yeah.
It was a 50-50 and it got changed.
We haven't paid out a 50-50 dividend at that level since No, we had a high year where we had high oil prices, and the budget, they spent about $1 billion and change on the floor with budget.
Then why would
amendments.
finance have to pass a bill to set that?
So, the dividend gets appropriated and the amount of the dividend gets set in the budget
Each year.
each year. That's correct. The attempt of Lyman Hoffman to rewrite the dividend formula right now is not completely fleshed out yet.
Okay.
There are people talking about passing that statute, but then making the effective date 3 years into the future. There are also people talking about passing that statute, and then they say, well, in a low price environment, low oil price environment, we don't have to really go by that either. I'm not interested in voting for something that people have no intention of actually sticking to.
Okay, thank you.
So, like, I'm just like, okay, that's a fascinating thing. Why don't we come up with a durable thing that works?
We'll follow the current law.
And I believe that if we're not gonna follow the current law, we should change the law.
Yeah.
Because it's silly that we don't, and we don't do that about a lot of stuff in the state. And it's not good. Yes?
Making revenue, what about recreational marijuana? It's like 7% right now, tax, it's like 28 million. In a lot of states, like 15 to 75. 75% would make 300 million out of 188 dispensaries.
Yep, so I am with you. The issue that we have with marijuana, it's a little history, okay? The state actually had the opportunity last year at the end of session to change the way that our marijuana tax is structured. But because of the way that some legislators wanted to pass that bill, got voted, it didn't come to a vote for concurrence in the Senate. Currently, the state does not have a retail tax on marijuana. We don't have one. In my opinion, we should have one. The way that we tax marijuana in the state now is at the wholesale level by weight, without a really good way to assign value to that wholesale product. Essentially, wholesalers are highly incentivized to game the system and saying that they have seeds and stems when they don't. Okay? The problem is with our marijuana tax now, being on the wholesale product, is a bunch of people that are growing in the industry are going out of business because they can't make any money, because they're competing with intoxicating THC products that are sold in gas stations and other places that are not effectively regulated. It's a big long story and I can tell you more about it. To answer your question, yes, we need to have a retail tax on marijuana. There are some complicating factors that exist about why that's not happening currently. We moved a marijuana tax bill out of Labor and Commerce onto Finance so that they could figure that out. We could have made changes to that bill in my committee, but they all would have gotten undone by whatever those very much more experienced and wiser folks on the Finance Committee wanted to do. Okay? So, we'll see what happens, but to fix that issue is we have to actually enforce the laws we have now on intoxicating THC products that are being sold. And then we actually have to effectively tax a product in a way that makes sense for that industry. And then we can, number one, reduce black market marijuana. That happens a lot. We have a big black market marijuana problem. And that means that the state's not getting any revenue for it. So, yeah. Yes.
Could the borough put a retail tax on marijuana? We could put one on cigarettes.
I don't know. Why, yes, we can find out. What I don't know is that Title 29, which governs what local governments can and can't do, it's very, very prescriptive about what a borough or municipality can tax or not. I just don't.
I know we can tax cigarettes.
Yep.
Anchorage does.
Right, and I've already put forth an ordinance to tax cigarettes.
Anchorage, okay.
But it, failed because it was to support, childcare, early childcare center. And, we're doing a whole, campaign on that, and you'll probably see us at some booths at the Salmon Fest and around the state this summer.
Steve, thanks for coming.
Do you have anything you want me to ask about? I'm good.
Okay. Take care. Other questions, comments?
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for coming. Well, thank you guys. Guys, my phone number is like all over the internet. If you want my cell phone number, I'm happy to give it to you.